Hi, Jeff Saxton with Eaton Performance Differentials here, and we'd like to take a few minutes today to talk about our product referred to as the Eaton Posi. Great story behind the Eaton Posi. Most of you are familiar with the term posi traction, which has been around since the early 1960s and 70s, which, as you may recall, is what was often referred to as the muscle car era here in the United States. And if you're familiar with that term, posi traction, clearly our product is a derivative of that, and the reason being is back in the 60s and 70s, the posi tractions being used by, for example, companies General Motors and 66 Chevelle Super Sports actually used Eaton-made posi traction differentials. And so we've got many, many years of history behind this product, and it's properly referred to as a clutch plate style limited slip differential. Now that's just kind of a long-winded way of saying this is a differential that responds to loss of traction. So for example, in a performance car application, you can lose traction for a variety of reasons. One is, of course, a poor traction surface. You hit some oil, some grease, some mud, sand, snow on the road surface. But more importantly, in the case of a performance car, you can lose traction simply because you're a little heavy-footed on the accelerator. We all like to do smoky burnouts, but unfortunately, without the proper type of differential, the net result is often what we call a one-wheel peel. And with the application of an Eaton Posi, we're going to eliminate that and allow the car to accelerate as effectively and efficiently as possible. So I'd like to take a few minutes and explain to you just how that works. In all my years of product training at Eaton Corporation, while everybody tends to use the term limited slip and posi traction quite commonly, it's been my experience that quite often people don't necessarily understand the principles of how it does what it does. So we'll take just a couple minutes to walk through what happens when you get on that accelerator and why the Eaton Posi is going to cause your street rod or your classic restoration to hook up and accelerate down the road exactly the way you want it to. Limited slip differentials in general operate on a principle called gear separation forces. And in fact, the product, the limited slip itself, is referred to within the engineering world as what we call a torque sensing differential. Now that's just a fancy way of saying that it is going to respond to changes in torque, in this case on your axle shafts. So picture going down a road with nice, good quality traction, dry pavement, and you get on the gas, the car accelerates in the fashion you would expect it to. But if you get heavy enough on the gas or you hit a lower traction point on the road surface, what will happen is one tire will break loose and start to spin. So when we talk about the torque sensing response of a limited slip differential, what we're referring to is that change in torque on the axle shafts in the axle. At that moment in time, when that tire begins to lose traction, whichever side of the vehicle it's on, that axle shaft will experience lower torque in comparison to the higher traction wheel on the opposite side. That's exactly what the Eaton Posi will respond to. And it will, through this phenomena called gear separation forces, create what we call a bias response. And bias is nothing more than a restriction of the differential's ability to differentiate. And by that I mean its ability to allow the two wheels to turn at speeds independent of one another. So as the wheel that is losing traction experiences this lower torque value on the axle shaft, the differential will respond and equalize the torque across the two axle shafts. The net result is that the higher traction wheel is brought into the same spin speed as the low traction wheel, and both wheels are forced to turn in unison, therefore, and propel the car forward. One of the other aspects of the Eaton Posi that makes it the superior limited slip on the market in the clutch plate style is the engineering that goes into it. Every single component in an Eaton Posi is engineered to have life of vehicle and beyond durability. And that's something that can't typically be said in many, many other clutch plate style limited slips. So in the event of the case or the differential carrier, for example, advanced engineering techniques and destructive validation are applied to ensure that this carrier is much, much stronger than the other components in your driveline and will never give you a problem in terms of any sort of long-term fatigue or failure. Same thing with the gear set in here. Eaton is considered one of the world's best manufacturers of what we call standard bevel gears, and one of the key features of our gears is the process by which we make them. If you look at a gear such as this typical side gear, the teeth on it are produced through a process called net forge. And that means that when the steel blank is forged in the forging press under high pressure and temperature, the teeth themselves are completely finished at that step. And what that means is that there's no further machining required, such as shaping or cutting or grinding, which would typically weaken the tooth form strength. So by using the net forging process, it allows for some of the highest strength gears in the industry, and therefore a gear set in your differential that is never going to give you issues in the field. Now, the principles by which a limited slip differential, in this case a clutch plate style, operate is through clutching systems that are positioned on the back face of each of the side gears. And so the gear separation force that I was just talking about a few moments ago is applied to your clutch system. So your clutches are what are transmitting torque across the axle and equalizing the loads to give you that maximum acceleration that I just described. And this is where an Eaton Posi really shines in comparison to many of our competitors. The clutch system in most differentials is subject to wear over time, and eventually what will happen is if the clutch systems wear enough, the biasing response, or its ability to respond to those losses of traction, is lost and the differential no longer performs as intended. And one of the ways that Eaton addresses that problem is through some very advanced materials in our clutch systems. And when you look at our clutches, you'll see a material that's applied to them that is actually an aerospace material called pyrolytic carbon. Pyrolytic carbon is a material that was originally developed for use in airliner brake linings, which means it's highly resistant to wear, very durable, and very high temperature tolerant, which happens to make it an ideal material for clutch facing in limited slip differentials. The result of this is a product that the clutch system doesn't wear over time and gives you consistent performance for the life of the vehicle. So it won't decay and fade the way many of the inferior products will over time. So the combination of all that technology results in a product that is going to perform as you expect. It's going to perform reliably as long as you want to use it, and it's going to be a source of pride that allows you to get off the line every single time you want to. And I'd like to conclude with just one final word about limited slip differentials in general. One consideration that you always want to keep in mind is proper lubricants. The Eaton Posi is a highly tolerant design in regard to the type of lubricant you use, but like most limited slips, what the ideal solution is a product that has an LS designation. And what I mean by that is any high quality gear lube from a major manufacturer, be it mineral or synthetic, if it has the LS, which in this case stands for limited slip designator, it will be a product that will typically work very well with the Eaton Posi. In the case of more conventional gear lubes, again, whether mineral or synthetic, if it does not have the LS designation, you do want to take the added step of acquiring the small bottles that are available at virtually any auto parts store, what are referred to as friction modifier or top treat for the gear lube in order for the Eaton Posi to perform properly. I sure appreciate your taking the time to listen to me today, and if you'd like more information on the Eaton Posi or any of the other Eaton Performance differentials, check out all the great resources at summitracing.com.